verse 11 says, therefore remember that you, once Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision, by what is called circumcision, made in the flesh by his hands. Somebody say, by his hands. That at that time you were without Christ. Tell your neighbors, I remember when I didn't know the Lord. Come on, tell them, I remember when I did not know the Lord. Being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenant of promise. You had no hope without God in this world. But now, somebody say, but now. In Jesus Christ, you were who were once afar off have been brought near to the blood of Christ. Somebody say, the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace and has made both one and has broken down the middle wall of separation, having abolished in his flesh enmity, that is the law, the commandments contained in ordinances, so that he may create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace, and that he might reconcile them both to God in body through the cross, therefore putting to death the enmity. You may be seated. The word of the Lord is already blessed. God be glorified. May we be edified. May the devil be horrified. Help me preach. Tell your neighbor, his blood did it. Well, you got to say it like you mean it. Say, his blood did it. The second stanza of our anthem says, stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, thou who has brought us thus far on the way. Thou who hast by thy might led us into thy light, true to our God, true to our native land. The shedding of blood has always been a part of our heritage. When one considers the kingdom, the modern day church, how we would act, it would appear to many that we've forgotten where we come from. I don't mean to bother y'all. I'll try this at 9:30, 11:30. But what club did you used to hang out at? What was your favorite drink? Who was your drug dealer? What was your favorite motel? Don't look at me in that tone of voice. God took us from the gutter, which we were lifted, the darkness from which we were withdrawn, the prison from which we have been set free, the wrath of God from which we have been saved, the pit of sin from which we have been rescued, the filth from which we have been washed, the sin from which we have been forgiven, the debt from which we have been redeemed, the burden from which we have been released, the debts from which we have been raised, the shackles from which we have been loosed, the guilt from which we have been justified, the judgment from which we have been acquitted. And all of these things happen because of the blood. Now, for these short time that I have, I want to examine through the scripture the importance of the blood. Tell your neighbor, say, his blood did it. Some may say, I thought the blood died on Calvary. Some may say the blood has ceased to be important. Some may say, how can the blood of a dead man help those that are living? The answer is simple. It is a blood. The blood was not a sacrifice for him, but it was a sacrifice for generations to come. Lest I be too long, let me jump into my points. This is preaching so that the points jump right out of the text. The first point is his blood unites. Say that with me. His blood brings us together. Jesus' church had a good name, and Paul still had to address some significant things to unify them. There were some of them that were without Christ, and when you're without Christ, you tend to worship other things. They worship the Greek god Diana. Some of y'all worship your car and your house. That's why you can stay there on Sunday and it don't bother you. Or your job. You'll go to your job more than you'll come to the church. I hope I hurt somebody, because that's not the way God. He said, forsake not thyself, the assembling together. If I give you 6 weeks, you can give me 2 hours on Sunday morning. Can't say amen, say ouch. We are united through the blood. No, we were not born by the same parents, but we're united through the blood. No, we were not raised in the same house, but we're united through the blood. Somebody help me preach. Tell your neighbor, the blood unites us. Secondly, not only does the blood unite us, but the blood breaks us down. Breaks us down. Blood unites us, blood breaks us down. Is there anybody here in 2009 that need God to break some stuff down? I wish I had a preaching church. Verse 14 say, for him, he himself is our peace, and who has made both one and broken down the middle wall of separation. There's some stuff you can't do. There's some places you can't go by yourself. There's some things you can't handle. There's some problems and issues you can't solve. But the blood breaks down every barrier. The miracles of the usage of the blood still baffle me. You'll find the word blood in the Bible 766 times just in the New Testament. Blood is essential in our lives in tearing down walls. It's in Romans 5 and 9. It said much more. Now being justified by his blood, we're saved from the wrath that would come. And in Hebrews 9:22, where it says in almost all things the law purged with blood, but without the shedding of blood there is no remission of sins. In Revelation 1 and 5 it says, and from Jesus Christ, who is the faithful, can I preach the Bible? The faithful witness and the first begotten of the dead and the prince of the kings of the earth, unto him that loved us, he washed us in his own blood. In Revelation 12 and 11 it said, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they lived not their own lives, but they lived their life unto death. The text says that if you have the blood will tear down every wall that's in your way. I wish I had somebody on my side. That wall may be physical, may be spiritual, may be emotional, may be financial, but when you apply some blood to those areas, there are some things that are accomplished. We got to realize this is a kingdom agenda. Good morning, y'all. May the Lord bless you real well. But I got one more point and I'm going to quit. Get a neighbor by the hand. Say, neighbor, his blood unites. His blood breaks down. But the final point in the text is his blood empowers. Can I tell somebody in this church that if you want power, you got to learn how to use the blood to your advantage. You're wondering why you didn't go through like somebody else went through. You're wondering why you didn't have the same problem. It's real simple. Because you were covered with the blood. Somebody shout, yeah. Every time the enemy attacks, he's got to deal with the angels that are on our side. Every time the enemy attacks, he's got to try to penetrate the shield of faith and block things coming our way. Every time the enemy attacks, he's got to try to break the seal. But the Bible says we're sealed to the day of redemption. Every time the enemy attacks, he'll try to reduce your anointing. If by chance he could handle the angels, oh shucks, y'all. If by chance he could penetrate the shield, if by chance he could break the seal, can I go higher there, Rick? If by chance he could mess up your anointing, if by chance he could mess up your family and mess up your business, there's one thing that yet remains active on our behalf. We are covered with the blood. I wish I had one person go to somebody and say, neighbor, I thank God for the blood. Because the Bible says when the enemy comes in like a flood, God raises up a standard against him. It's in the blood. Isn't it written that we are greater? Greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. I don't want to bother nobody, but get one more person by the hand. Say, neighbor, I told you last week, I don't care what happens on your right or on your left. It ain't coming to you. You are the exception because you've been covered with the blood. Go to somebody else. Tell them the blood covers. Come here, Paul, and clothe us out. He said, we are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not forsaken. We are cast down, but not destroyed. Why is that, Bishop? Because I got some blood on me. Hey, the blood change every foul attitude. The blood deals with lunatics. The blood will kill your filthy imagination. The blood calms your heated anger. The blood quiets your ruthless accusation. I got to go, but is there anybody here? Anybody here know that there's still power in the blood? I got to quit, but run to my three people. Say it's in the blood. It's in the blood. What can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood. Oh, how precious is the flow of that blood. You know how you came out of surgery? Because the blood was covering you. You know how you came out of the accident? Because the blood was covering you. You know how you didn't lose your mind? Because the blood. When the devil messes with you, tell him the blood is against you. I say when the devil talks to you, interrupts your sleep, got you wondering, say the blood is against you. Because it never lost its power. It never lost its power. I'm trying not to shout, but I know it was the blood. I went to the doctor Tuesday for my stress test, and they said because of your past history, we think you're only going to do 4 to 5 minutes. And I got on the machine and they shot me with the stuff. And after I passed 5 minutes, the nurse went and got the doctor. After I passed 6 minutes, they went and got the cardiologist. When I got to 9 minutes, they said, that's enough, that's enough. My doctor called, said, when you leave the Hickory Cardiac Care, I said, come down to the doctor's office. He said, I want to share something with you. He said, last year, January, when you came to see me, with all the stuff that had happened in your life, personally and otherwise, he said, me and my wife prayed for you. My doctor's a Christian. And said, that night, my wife dreamed that you had a nervous breakdown. The next night, I dreamed that I was at your funeral. And he said to me, I don't know how to describe your mental or emotional state. Because after all you've been through, you should have cracked up by now. He said you should have had a heart attack and died. And I thought about it. Somebody prayed for me and covered me with the blood. I ran 2 laps around this church last week, celebrating my anniversary from surgery. Because his blood, I dare you to tell somebody, don't